So I'm Matthew Frost. A couple of years ago, I led a task group appointed by the Archbishops Council to look at the whole question of lay leadership across the Church of England, especially lay leadership out there in the world, in the gathered and sent church. What we're doing in our workplaces, in our homes, in our communities, and wider society.
And the report really encouraged the church, dioceses, parishes, deaneries to shift their focus from ordained ministry to laity and release the gifts of all. Why aren't we doing this?
So I think there's a number of factors that make it difficult. I think firstly, I don't think we've always had a vision sort of communicated to us that actually the mission we're called to is not just sort of doing things on Sunday, sort of turning up to church, the inner spiritual life, but actually there's a whole external life about following Jesus in what we're doing Monday to Saturday. And I think we often struggle to focus on that for all sorts of reasons. So I think that's one of the reasons. It's sort of shifting from focus on Sunday to actually really wrestling with what does it mean to follow Jesus Monday to Saturday. I think also the reality is that the whole issue of resources is an issue. So not a lot of resources available for things that can really help us on that Monday to Saturday journey. An awful lot of it's focused on what goes on Sunday, what goes on in our inner spiritual life, which is of course really important, but we also need to find a way to find, people basically say, well, I didn't know there were all these resources. Secondly, the resources that exist are very scarce. Where we do have resource, it's usually for things like lay readers, ecclesial sort of lay ministries, like things that go on Sunday, which of course is important, but we need to find a way to spotlight, showcase, develop, promote, engage, connect people with all of those resources that are more geared to the Monday to Saturday side.
And time is pressing, it's critical that we take heed of this. Are you confident that things will change over the next few years?
Yeah, I'm really hopeful actually. So one of the really interesting things in this, as we got into the detail of this report, is we found that over the last 70 years, ever since 1946 and the Towards the Conversion of England report commissioned by Archbishop William Temple, which said all the same things we're saying, we find every 10 years the Church of England comes up with a report that says the same thing. So we were right from the beginning thinking we've got to figure out what's going to be different this time. And really I think there's two things I would say. One is to locate this as a culture change issue, not just a project. It's the whole shift of culture that must change. That's the first thing. The second thing is to have a very serious, well-resourced implementation plan that is designed to empower and release what's already happening at parish, deanery and diocesan level. Now that's what we're doing. The Church of England, the General Synod unanimously endorsed the recommendations of the report, and all 4 recommendations are being implemented as we speak. So no, I'm encouraged.
And you spoke passionately today about your own personal journey into and whole life discipleship. Tell us a little bit about that.
So as I reflected and was listening, but really reflecting on my own life, it seemed to me that almost everything that we have on whole life discipleship, on discipleship today, the resources that exist, are almost all about intimacy with Christ, intimacy with God, which is absolutely the foundation. But for me, there have been 3 other steps that have been absolutely critical for me confidently following Jesus in the whole of life. So the first of those is a whole of life vision being cast. That actually what I'm being invited to do is not just be nice to a few people, try and speak about the gospel at every opportunity and give my money to the church, but actually I'm called to participate in God's renewal of all things in every sphere of society, and that includes my workplace. So a much bigger vision was the first thing. The second thing was to wrestle with specific vocation. The same way, just imagine if we spent the same amount of effort and resource that we put into helping people discern ordained vocation, doing the same for lay vocation. Because I think if every single person was given that investment of time and effort and resource to connect with what was God's specific calling for their life, I think this country would be transformed. And that happened for me. I went on this fabulous course called the Adventure of Living course that was run by my church 12 years ago, and it led directly to me joining TIF. And actually, had I not gone through that, I would never have even ended up chairing this task group. And the third thing is we need as learners to be in an active, vibrant, dynamic learning community. And that's what our churches need to become. Learning communities that help us, that inspire us to take the first step, that help us discern together what our specific calling is, that cast a bigger vision, that we can be accountable to in our own journey of growth and discipleship, but where we can connect with the best available resources, where we can be encouraged to dream bigger and think bigger. All of those things need to happen, that active learning community. It's interesting, so while I was Chief Executive of TIFON, one of the things that struck that is absolutely critical in frontline development in the poorest communities, in any community that we were involved in, was this idea of creating communities of action learners, where the action learning, continuous improvement dynamic was embedded in every community. That everybody knows that is the key to sustainable transformational development in Africa, India, in the majority world. I think it's precisely the same in this country, and I think we need to rediscover that in our local churches.
Thank you very much. Great, well I hope